One afternoon, a lawyer was riding in his limousine when he saw two men along the roadside eating grass. Now, let me back up and tell you that I tell people when things get bad, and they're going to get bad. I mean, you might have to chew it up real well, you know, and it doesn't taste all that great, but you can eat grass, and you can afford to get the wheatgrass, the barley grass, and so on. Even better yet, I met a woman years ago at a health convention who was in her 80s, and she looked like she was in her 50s and had more energy than a 30-year-old. And she said that she lived in Poland when Hitler came through with the Nazis, and people were pulling wallpaper off the wall and reconstituting the wheat paste with water, but they eventually would die of malnutrition. She says, "What am I doing?" And her parents had died, friends had died. She went out and started eating grass like the cat. She says, "The cows eat it, they produce the milk." She says, "I'm going to do that." So not only did she survive, she was healthier for it, and later on she got into wheatgrass and barley grass. So with that, I'll go back to the story here about got out to investigate. He asked one man, "Why are you eating grass?" "We don't have any money for food," the poor man replied. "We have to eat grass." "Well, then you can come with me to my house and I'll feed you," the lawyer said. "But sir, I have a wife and 2 children with me. They are over there under that tree, as you can see." "Bring them along," the lawyer replied. Turning to the other poor man, he stated, "You may come with us also." Second man in a pitiful voice then said, "But sir, I also have a wife and 6 children with me. Bring them all as well." The lawyer answered. They all entered the car, which was no easy task, even as large as the limousine was. Once underway, one of the poor fellows turned to the lawyer and said, "Sir, you are too kind. Thank you for taking all of us with you." The lawyer replied, "Glad to do it. You'll really love my place. The grass is almost a foot high." Thank you for laughing. I did that not too long ago. People were looking at me like, I didn't catch it or something. I don't know. I was going to make copies of this, and I forgot. It's my background. And I won't go through all of this, but I'll just kind of touch the highlights. You probably wonder, who is this guy up there speaking? Of course, Bruce gave me a good preface there. But I'm 69 years young by the grace of my Heavenly Father Yahweh. Throughout the past 40 years, I've been in natural healing and alternative therapy fields. I've been a biomedical electronics technician. In fact, I actually was going to apply for a patent for the TENS unit before they even were out, but never had the money to do it. I had invented it many years ago. I called it biophysiological pulse generator. Natural/alternative healing educator, natural/alternative healing facilitator, herbalist, nutritional consultant, until they passed the dietitians law in Ohio years ago, and I had to stop that. But chiropractic assistant, electrodiagnostician, and therapist. And for the past 20 plus years, I've worked with people that are seriously ill. And one of the things that I use, I'll be talking to you about tonight, is the Vapozone detox system, used to call the OZOL generator. In fact, I first introduced it to a USPA convention this has been about 15 years ago, when David Hudson spoke. One of the hotels, they had that meeting up there. And I had a real small aquarium-sized ozone generator that I used. And there was a holistic veterinarian that came there, and she bought the setup and used it with the animals back in Las Vegas. And she was so impressed with the dogs and cats and birds getting healed with this, breathing this ozol vapor that was going out into the clinic, that she wrote an article in the Holistic Veterinarian Journal, which is, I posted on my website. I got permission from her and from the Holistic Veterinarian Journal. So I'll get into that a little later. I've studied herbology with Dr. Schultz. I have his videos available, converted from VHS to DVD, and some DVDs copied for donations. You can get one of my business cards up here, and just old video, audio classes. I've got that on CDs. If a person wants to get an external hard drive, I can put everything. I can put a lot of stuff on there. So, let's see. I teach classes on Friday nights in Columbus, up at Joe, mostly showing videos anymore, but I will be getting into Dr. Max Gerson's therapies come February, and then I'll get into Dr. Schultz's therapies in March and so on. And,
is that the Dr. Schultz in California?
Yes, Dr. Richard Schultz, yeah. I've got all his newsletters, articles, books, videos. I've studied his information. I've worked with people that couldn't afford this setup here using herbs, do the Incurables program. It's a pretty intense program, folks, but one thing about it, it gets results. It's beyond SCACT and some of these other things you've seen out there, but it's intense. If a person does the full-blown Incurables program, you're talking about doing something probably every 15 minutes to a half hour from the time you get up till the time you go to bed. So, but I have a lot of that information on my website, a lot of free information that you can get, and a few audio clips too on MP3 files. So be sure to pick up, there's price list, order form, there's business cards here. So, and I've got DVDs on the ozone therapy here. I've got my setup that I'll be demoing later. I've got activated charcoal powder, which I highly recommend if you do just nothing but that. I had a man that had cancer, was supposed to be dead within a month. And he couldn't even afford it. He'd used up all his insurance money and his savings to get well again. In 30 days, he's supposed to be dead. And I says, listen, drink as much of the charcoal slurry as you can. That's a teaspoon per 8-ounce glass of water. I'm doing good to get people to do 3 to 5 glasses a day, let alone he drank 12 glasses of charcoal slurry a day. A month later, no more cancer. He was completely well again. He was like a young man. He says, I haven't felt this good since I was in my 30s. This guy was in his 80s. Advanced prostate cancer, stage 4. I mean, he was supposed to be dead by the end of the month. And he was well. And that's all he did was drink the charcoal slurry. It's an electrical sponge that pulls toxins, waste, chemicals out of the system, through the intestinal walls, by osmosis, whatever. And it's miraculous. So I have people, when they're doing the ozone therapy, you get this in the kit, the charcoal, because when you're doing this therapy, it's so powerful that you can even die from the detoxing if you're not careful. You got to do hot cold showers, keep your bowels moving, cleaned out, do some skin brushing, any eliminated channels you can get going. But this is a basic thing that you got to get into. Is doing charcoal slurry. For the past 20 plus years, I've been making some of my own and selling others' healing tools. These alternative healing devices help the body to heal and cure itself. That's what I tell people. Nothing outside the body, or nobody outside the body can heal and cure the body. This is just a healing tool to help the body heal and cure itself, okay? That gets around the FDA anyhow, because they don't like to hear that word, heal and cure, because they've got the word, I think it's cure, is copyrighted in the Copyright Office, which really shouldn't be, because they don't get into curing. All they do is treat root symptoms rather than root causes. Most of these healing tools I've sold from my website for the past 10 plus years, and I've also been involved with Royal Ride frequency instruments for the last 20 years. In fact, I was hoping that my naturopathic friend, Kim Lyons, would come tonight, because he'll bring the BCX Ultra, which I believe is the best ripe instrument out there right now. I helped develop it, all the features and functions on it, working with this since '92. Some of the healing tools that I've developed, some of them I've dropped since then, but biophoton tools, photon wand tube, photon torch, photon blaze, photon blood, biomagnetized transducer, which is a sound therapy pressure wave device, both a home unit and a clinical unit, electrocellular energizer, which I haven't sold that in a while, but what it does is it's similar to Lakowski. It builds up the cell voltage when it gets low, using high voltage energy field around. So it's not so frequency specific as Reich therapy is, but there's a switch so you can switch back and forth, which I had set that up. But that's kind of an expensive setup, and you do need a frequency instrument with it, not necessarily the right one I sell. You can get an off-the-shelf pumping generator, and nowadays you don't have to dial it in and try to get it stabilized out. It's all electronic, stable, punch it in like a touch-tone phone type setup. So with that, I'll go into my talk on ozone. I call the talk Ozone Very Important Health Enhancer. Used to say the most important health enhancer. That's probably a little bit too much, but before we ask, the first thing is, what is ozone and how is ozone formed? Of course, most of us hear about ozone, the meteorologists, it's pollutant and smog, but before we ask the question, what is ozone, we need to ask, what isn't ozone? Ozone is not the primary pollutant in smog, as our newscaster meteorologists would have us to believe. Think about it. How could it be the main component of smog when it only occurs in 0.3 to 1 part per million on the average? Maybe we should take a closer look at the carbon, the nitrogen, and sulfur compounds that are in the smog that we're finding, that are real bad guys, that can really truly irritate and contaminate our lungs. Because when you smell after a thunderstorm, that fresh clean smell, that's ozone. When you, ladies, if you maybe don't do this anymore, but your grandmothers did, hung their clothes out on the line. That fresh clean smell is from the ultraviolet rays of the sun converting the oxygen into ozone. Maybe I better back up and explain. Well, that's coming up. Okay. I've been doing this talk for a while, but so why not blame ozone? Sounds logical. I say if you eat your dessert here that you like here in was Yellow Springs, doesn't taste the same in China. So the ozone up above is protecting us from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. You know, that's not necessarily a bad guy down here. So, analogy. Okay, most elements, I don't know if any of you have a physics or chemistry background, most elements occur as a single atom. They have a balance of electrons, protons. But oxygen is rare. It is short 2 electrons in its outer orbit. I don't have a board to do this, but it wants to attach itself to another O1, oxygen atom, and share those 2 outer electrons, okay? It's called spin resonance. And so when lightning or ultraviolet rays of the sun, which have a power, force enough to split the O2 apart, these O1s are out here floating free, and so they want to either rejoin back with an O1 and become stable again, or they will combine with an O2 and become O3, which is ozone. But that extra atom is semi-stable. It wants to break off and react with or oxidize substances, toxins, waste, chemicals, pollutants, whatever. So that can also be in your body, too. And hope everybody understands that. Okay. So if anything, we would welcome more ozone in the air that we breathe so that we'll get rid of those bad guys. The EPA would have us believe that the air contains more than 0.5 parts per million of ozone, that our lungs would become irritated. But let's take an objective look at this critical statement for the simple reason to see why ozone is irritating to our lungs. I mean, out on the ocean, pine forests, seashores, waterfalls, all those are high amounts of ozone. The Japanese did a study, and I wish I could find that thing again. I found it at OSU one time. And they found that people that live in the areas where there's high amounts of ozone generally live up to 20 years longer and are healthier. Okay? So the ozone isn't the bad guy like that have us to believe. You know, places like Gary, Indiana, where there's high amounts of pollution there, people get cancer more. And if anything, we should welcome more ozone, try to produce it, even if we do it artificially, to prevent a lot of that. So, ozone being a very powerful oxidizer reacts strongly with the contaminants that are deposited in our lungs from the pollution we've been breathing for many years. Ozone, while doing a strong oxidative job, may seem to be a little bit harsh, but is really helping us out health-wise. And see, I'm going to show you a way to get ozone into your lungs, higher amounts of ozone, so that it doesn't react with, by passing it through an essential oil like tea tree oil or eucalyptus oil. Right? And it's a lot easier to breathe that way. Okay, I'll do that demo here in a little bit. See where I'm at here. Okay. Ozone also protects us from, as I said before, excess ultraviolet rays of the sun, which interact with the rancid suntan lotions and oils producing skin cancer. Down through the centuries, sheep herders do not get skin cancer, and they're out in the sun all day long. It wasn't until the advent of rancid suntan lotions and oils, which the ultraviolet rays of the sun react with that and can produce skin cancer. That's what they found out. That's what researchers in Europe found out. Ozone is a fresh, clean smell after a thunderstorm, in a pine forest, a mountaintop, near a waterfall, along a seashore. Not to mention it makes the sky blue. That's what makes the sky blue, is ozone, guys. There's other higher molecules of oxygen, by the way. In fact, the hundreds of people who live up in the Himalayan mountains, they've done research, and they figure it's going to be it's at least up to O40, if not above. And research has gone up to 120 some, I think, molecules of oxygen. They found very sophisticated ways to measure these higher molecules. So, and Bob Beck, I was talking about Bob Beck a little bit ago. He kept saying, "Are all you familiar with who Bob Beck is, or was before he died?" Okay, he would say there's no higher molecule than O3, ozone. And I called him on it when he came to the convention as his main speaker years ago, the USDA convention, told him. I says, "Hey, you're way behind the times. You may be a physicist, but you're not a chemist." And he was railing on garlic too, and I could get him on. I don't want to get into all that, but whatever. But I told him, I said, "You're not up with things because the chemical abstracts shows its research, and this is like 15 years ago. It's clear up to 060 now." And he was taken aback. I mean, everybody thought everything he spoke was gospel truth. You know, oh, well, Bob Beck, oh, Dr. Bob Beck, PhD in physics, but that doesn't mean he had a PhD in chemistry or he was a master herbalist either. So, but he was speaking out of his field, which he shouldn't have done. But
After all, he is dead.
Yeah, right. Please make up, okay, please make up our minds. Doesn't our favorite dessert taste the same no matter where we eat it? I already brought that up. Okay, this sets the record straight because now we know that ozone is truly the good guy. Maybe the truly bad guy is that local newscaster keeps perpetuating the same old myth that ozone is the main component of smog and is really bad for us to breathe. But as we found out, this just isn't true. We can now take a look at the next question. How is ozone formed? Like induced static electricity, which I mentioned that, it's high voltage, so it splits the O2 apart and gives O1s, which either reattach to another O1, become O2, which is stable, or it attaches to an O2 and becomes semi-stable as ozone, O3. I could draw all this stuff. I'm not going to go into all that. But next, the ozone is naturally formed by the ultraviolet rays of the sun reacting photochemically with the oxygen molecules in the air and the upper atmosphere. The ozone layer is formed that way, and that's what protects us from the ultraviolet rays of the sun, because it's sort of a dual-purpose thing. So, ozone is a fresh, clean smell that we smell. Yes?
I was just going to say the old dryers and some of the refrigerators and stuff
There you go.
have ozone bulb in it.
Yeah, I mentioned that in it. And by the way, I've got this DVD where I'm interviewed. There's a documentary, which is the best documentary on ozone, and I was interviewed on Channel 19 in Columbus, and I mentioned that on that 23-minute interview, that back, I was in the appliance business, and back in the 50s, you could buy the dryers, and they would put an ultraviolet bulb in there, okay? The ultraviolet bulb would produce some ozone, but it also, the ultraviolet rays also kill germs too. Clean. So it sterilizes double. It's a sort of a double 1 + 1 = 3 synergistic action. And the violet ray machine, which isn't really ultraviolet, but when that high voltage goes up against the skin, it produces ozone underneath the skin and even in the bloodstream too. So that's one of the reasons why it works so well. And they're still around. They still work too. Let's see. Okay. Ozone is formed artificially by man-made electrical and UV sources, including air cleaners, clothes dryers, copiers, faxes, televisions, electrical motors. There's a problem, though, with these artificial sources, most of them. They generate harmful nitrogen oxide compounds, which, along with the ozone, is being generated. And that's more of that we'll talk about later. But remember that ozone is ozone. Nothing more, nothing less, no matter how it is formed. I know some people say that when they are working in offices, they're around a copier and I don't like it, that's ozone. No, it's not just ozone being produced by that copier. You got these other compounds which are not very nice to smell. Certainly not like after a thunderstorm by any means. Okay, part 2. Oh, there's references, and there's many different references. And if you want, I can send this, if you email me, I can send this newsletter to you so you can read this again in more detail. Gives you references to where I took this information from. What can ozone do, and how can ozone be generated efficiently? Now we want to know, what can ozone do? You'll remember that our good guy ozone is highly reactive and oxidative. The extra single unstable oxygen atom in the ozone molecule wants to break away and react with electrically unstable atoms and other molecules, including nitrogen and hydrocarbon-based chemical compounds. Oxidizing them in very stable and safe atoms. In fact, you can take ammonia, you can take formaldehyde, you can take acetone, and all those things, when ozone combines with it, breaks it down into simple substances like nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, water, things that we can deal with. You know, where some of those things are very bad on the lungs, especially acetone. That will eat the linings of your lungs out. I used to work around some of that stuff, and people work at nail salons. I feel sorry for those women. They don't realize you're talking about, you're headed for lung cancer, okay? Destroys the lung tissue. Bad, very bad. Let's see. Yeah, okay, here it breaks it down. Acetone. C3H6O plus 8 molecules of ozone equals 3 carbon dioxide, 3 of water, and 8 of oxygen. Deal with that. Or combine it with ammonia. 2 NH3 molecules, that's 2 ammonia molecules, plus 3 molecules of ozone equals nitrogen, 2, 3H2O, that's water, and 3 atoms of oxygen. There are only 2 of the many chemicals that ozone can neutralize. I mean, there was a time, let me give you a story. I lived in Louisiana years ago, back in the days when Hank Williams was a big country star. In fact, he lived not too far from where we were at. And there was a Cadillac that they were trying to sell to this dealer a lot, that some guy had committed suicide in there, and they didn't find his body for like a couple of weeks. And they couldn't even give this car away. It was a Cadillac. Because you'd go in and sit into the seat, and the smell of death was in the pores of the metal so bad that you would just start to vomit almost immediately and get out of the car. And there's no way. They thought they were going to have to dismantle it and use it for scrap metal. And some guy says, and I didn't know this. I was a young kid at the time. I didn't know. He says, all you have to do is run an ozone generator in it overnight. It'll take that odor right out of the pores of the metal. And the carpeting and everything. Oh, actually, they had they tore out the ceiling. They tore out the door panel. They did everything they could, but it was still in the pores of the metal. They couldn't get that odor out. So they did that with the ozone generator, and then it went for the regular price, used car price. So, but then later on, years ago, a friend of mine had a cat that peed into his guitar case. And he tried all kinds, yeah, simple but funny. He tried all kinds of cleaners, all kinds of stuff. He says, what can I do? I says, it's real simple. I'll just take the hose off my ozone generator and blow it in there for an hour, and it'll neutralize it. And I'll tell you, cat urine is one of the most potent urines there is. It really is. It's high in ammonia. Boy, this is really bad. He was so impressed, and he couldn't play the guitar because he'd been in there with it, oh man. And he just said, that's it. I want one of those things. I want one of those ozone generators, so he bought one from me. It was a pretty quick sale there.
Did you ever cut any commission?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it can neutralize odors, smoke odors, cooking odors, bathroom odors, pet odors, carpet odors, body fungus, mold, yeast, must, mildew, all those things. In fact, after some of those hurricanes over on the East Coast, I sold a few generators that people knew about. I wasn't trying to push it, but they got the black mold, that Stachybotrys black mold, which is really bad news. They even had to evacuate schools and redo the schools for that because the kids were getting really ill from that. But the ozone will destroy that. In fact, 99.9% of any pathogen, whether it's yeast, mold, fungus, bacteria, virus, parasite, small parasites, not real big ones, but whatever, it'll destroy them all, neutralize them all. Now, they say 99.9% because there might be something out there. But guess what? Even the man-made viruses that they invent in their Army laboratories in Fort Detrick, Maryland, it'll destroy those. I mean, it'll analyze, annihilate those too.
You know, the World Health Organization's headquarters. That's true.
Yeah.
It is.
So, okay, Otto Warburg. And I need to change this. I found out that this wasn't true. I'd read this and copied it, and I found out that Otto Warburg was a German scientist who did research for about 50 years. And he won the Nobel Prize twice. Was nominated a third time, is what I said here, but I found out he won it once and was nominated a second time. But it was still unprecedented. The Nobel Prize for medicine.
He was nominated for the second, but Hitler wouldn't let him take it.
Yeah, that's it.
So he only had one Nobel Prize.
One Nobel Prize. But he proved that when the human cell goes, the oxygen level at the human cell level goes below 40% and below 12% in the air, that the cell will change from a metabolic process of respiration of oxygen and glucose, which is your normal animal metabolism, to the catabolic process of fermentation, which is carbon dioxide and glucose to survive. And that's plant metabolism, folks. So basically, cancer is plant metabolism. Okay.
Fungus.
Huh?
It's a fungus.
Yeah, okay. And unless it receives required oxygen, it will later become a cancer plant cell. Ozone can help us in three ways: by oxygenating the starving cells, they will return back to their normal metabolism; by oxidizing the toxins, the fertile grounds will be eliminated for the pathogens to flourish. And by the way, it's not the pathogens that cause the disease. They're like a secondary or tertiary cause. It's the terrain, the environment, okay? You got to clean up the environment. That's what he was proving, that you need to get oxygen in there so that the toxins are taken out of the way from the cell membrane to where they can get in there. That's another thing that the charcoal does. The Chinese did a study with the charcoal. And by the way, there's a lot of misinformation. I got to correct this, folks, before I forget, about charcoal. Oh, it'll take nutrients out of the system. Oh, it'll take blah, 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 blah. No, it does not. It will take out organic contaminants, okay, and it's definitely inorganics. But the Russians did a study. They took wisteria rats, I found out that wisteria rats have a metabolism very similar to human beings. And they didn't take young rats, they took adult rats. And they put charcoal in their diet. And guess what? They increased their lifespan. This is going to blow you away because it blew them away. They had to redo their tests. They said something's wrong. 50%. Increased the lifespan of these adult rats 50%. No vitamin, no herb, no other therapy that they seemed to even come close to that they had studied. So they redid their tests, and sure enough, on the average, it increased the lifespan of these adult rats 50% by adding charcoal to their diet. So they wondered, why is this happening? So they found out that the charcoal was so efficient at absorbing the toxins away from the cell membrane to where now the oxygen nutrients could get through. And guess what? The rats ate less food. So that increased their lifespan too. So it was kind of a double thing going on, synergistic action. So don't underestimate the simple power of carbon. An activated form called activated charcoal powder over there. And tonight am I allowed to announce the prices now? The charcoal powder is $15 for this 10-ounce quart-size jar. And the DVD about it, I put that together. It's 2 hours and 27 minutes. It's got a lot of different information on charcoal, tremendous amount. I'm really big on it. I've studied so much into it. I've sat under Carl Carnes' teaching, who was at the Port Patel Memorial Institute. Sorry about that, Conrad. I told you I was going to stay here, but I didn't. And if you want the charcoal powder, $15 a jar. The DVD is $10, but the combo is $20. All right. Getting back to ozone. If you, let's see, now the question is, how can ozone be generated efficiently? Ozone can be generated efficiently by two methods. The ultraviolet rays of the sun can be used, you can use an ultraviolet lamp. And there's a special lamp that I got that was custom made at one time when I was building my generators way back that put out more ozone than normal UV lamps, because normal UV lamps only put out small amounts of ozone. But if they narrow the spectrum, the frequency down, you can get more ozone output. But still, it's not high concentration of ozone. It might be high amounts, but not high concentration of ozone. So, but it was a good thing. I didn't have to use an air dryer on these. I had to put an air dryer on it because a standard high voltage unit puts out a lot of nitrous oxides with moisture coming in the air. So the air dryer takes that out and puts out high amounts. On this one, I also talk about this. This used to come with a small air dryer inside, but they quit doing it. So what I do is I take a professional aquarium air dryer and retrofit it on the side. And this, you don't have to dry these beads very often. It'll go a year or more before you dry the beads. So,
where did you get that? I have one with the small air dryer. Is that?
yeah, this is, I got this from marine aquatic type. You can find them on the internet.
Okay. How did you retrofit?
I had to drill some holes.
Okay.
Mount this. I mean, it took me a while to get this thing figured out right so I could do it, and boy, it still takes a little time. And then drill a hole for the hose and reroute the hoses. But what's happening is the air pump is pumping in through this end, and it comes out here and goes into the actual ozone chamber. And it puts out, I'll tell you, the strength of that ozone is more potent than it was before because of you drying the air. That little air dryer they used to have on the side was only like that long, and you had to dry those beads out, the desiccant beads. Put them in a microwave or out in the sun probably every week or so. This you could go for months. And then you can just replace the beads, don't even fool around, just pull the end off, and I can do that probably. Okay, let's get into the history. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up and say that you've got two types of ozone generators. You've got the type like this is more of a home unit, or you'll see ones that use an oxygen tank or an oxygen concentrator on the input. And these put out higher amounts of ozone, but you sure couldn't breathe that even through tea tree oil. You can take it through olive oil, and it produces something called ethozol. And I met Dr. Turska on the internet. Actually on the internet. Or on the phone, I'm sorry, on the phone. He was a Finnish doctor up in Mist, Oregon. He's no longer with us now. But someone told me, you need to call him because he's doing something similar to what you're doing. I revived this from the turn of last century, and I better give the background to this. I got this underground newsletter talking about ozol vapor, and I thought, boy, this sounds like a fantastic thing. So I went around researching and prayed about it and got all the stuff together. The nebulizer came from the aromatherapy industry because I'd read about this nebulizer that this Belgian scientist had developed but there wasn't anything available that I could see. Everything was plastic, and you put essential oils in those things, and it just melts the plastic. And they didn't produce small enough particles. You have to get down to 1/100th of a micron, which is a millionth of a meter in diameter, to go through the lung tissue. So I found out that there was one available. It was called BioRegime nebulizer. It was developed by a French scientist in the laboratory, and then the Taiwanese come out with their own version. But it has little peaks in here that break down the particles. And you've got to get them with the 12. There's 12 peaks. I don't know, scrubbing scrubs the particles down to get the vapor down small enough. So when you combine the ozone with that, it gets the ozone vapor small enough to go through the lung tissue readily. Now what I have people do, instead of using tea tree oil, which is kind of a universally essential oil for healing, is I have people use eucalyptus. If they have a lung condition, they can use eucalyptus oil. That's more indicated for like lung cancer, tuberculosis, which is on the rise. We thought we conquered that. Emphysema, bronchitis, those are more autoimmune problems, but it does work with those also. So I'll demonstrate that later, like I said. The Germans, let me say that the history of the Germans is they draw 100 cc's of blood out, ozonate that, bubble ozone into the blood mixture, excuse me, blood fluid, not mixture, and then they re-inject it back into the body, intravenously, intraorally, whatever, and then that reverses any condition that's in there. The best system that ever came out was called polyatomic apheresis, where they drew the blood out of one arm, ozonated it, actually with higher molecules than even ozone, pumped it back in the other arm, come out blood almost like sludge oil when a person's really ill, go back in cherry red in the other arm. That was a very expensive setup, and the guy that invented it, the physicist, didn't keep up with repairing it. He died. He was kind of a bad businessman, but somebody took it over, and they're doing it in Thailand, I think it is, or Malaysia, isn't it?
Malaysia.
Mike? Oh, you know about
Peter
it.
Jablonovich, I can't pronounce his name, Professor Ozone.
You want to come up here and help me? I see you smile. No, that's okay. I'm not. No. I wonder why you're smiling. You know about this stuff. Yes, Bruce.
How's our friend Ed McCabe doing with ozone? Remember him?
Yeah, he doesn't do the ozone therapy, although he sells ozone generators now. He sells an octazone, which is 08. He's still, I'm very disappointed in Ed. He helped me get some business with a Russian naturopathic doctor in Brooklyn, New York, Viktor Gonkarov, who I sold my generator to. And let me tell you a story there too. I guess I'm digressing a lot here on this, but you gotta go by inspiration. But Dr. Gonkarov read the book Flood Your Body with Oxygen by Ed McCabe. And in there was a short article, a brief article of the historical article that I have published on my website from the historical journals. And by the way, let me back up even more and say that I went to the prior health science library at OSU, Columbus, and was looking for a book. It was in the historical archives on the top floor. And normally when you get into these books in the library, they have to take your card, they take your car keys. I don't drive a car, so they couldn't take your car keys. And they make you go in the room, they lock the door behind you. You cannot leave. And when you're ready, you knock on the door and signal to the lady, to let you out. Because they don't want these books going anywhere. We're talking about medical books that go back to the turn of the last century. Really old stuff. So there was a book by Homer Clark Bennett, who was from Lima, Ohio. And so as I was opening the book up, it came to me, and I know it was from Yahweh, from God. I said, this could save lives. Because I opened it up right to the page I wanted without even searching for it. And she looked at me, she says, go copy it, don't tell anybody, go copy it. Yeah, she let me copy this from this historical book that was worth thousands of dollars. It's like, wow, was I grateful for that. And so I probably put it on my website. But he had just a short part of that article in that book.
I have the book.
Oh, you have the complete book now? Ooh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. This is my buddy Mike Tewksbury over here. I invited him.
What's the name of the book?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I forgot the title. It's not just about ozol therapy. There's other things in there. But there's a chapter in there about electrification of the blood, which I think I might even have on my other article here, newsletter. Anyhow, Dr. Gonkarov was a Russian naturopath in Brooklyn, New York. He called up Ed. He was friends with Ed McCabe, who wrote the book Oxygen Therapies, and then he wrote the book Flood Your Body with Oxygen. He says, there's this article in here about ozol vapor. He says, I want to know about that. You know anybody that's into this? He says, it's funny that you should ask me. He says, I just had a man call me the other day that's developed a setup to do this. He says, well, I need his number. So Dr. Victor Gonkarov from Brooklyn, New York, Russian naturopath, called me up. And he got a machine, and boy, he was impressed with it. I mean, even with a couple treatments, people were getting results like he had not seen with other things he's doing. He's into alternative healing therapies. But the best story I've got to tell you was this, and I brought tears to my eyes, and I always thank God for this. But Russian community in New York are very close. They know each other. This Russian oncologist, who was also a radiologist, had a 7-inch tumor on her lungs. She was supposed to be dead within the month. She had to send herself home. She couldn't even help herself with her drugs or any of that stuff. So she heard about Dr. Gonkarov and went to him. And so she started doing the ozone inhalation therapy, which I'm going to demo a little bit later, which is the ozone going through T-trail. And her 7-inch tumor shrank to 1 inch in 3 weeks and was gone by the 4th week, which she's supposed to have been dead by that time. There was no more cancer left in her lungs. She was so taken by it all, and she decided to just leave this country and go back to her homeland of Russia and start her life over again. Okay, that's probably one of the most powerful stories, but I've seen so many types of cancer disappear because of doing this therapy. It works in so many different levels, and I can't get into all of that here, but oh, I'm on the page. There's a lot of history to this, and I can send you the newsletter on this if you email me. I don't want to get into all of that because it gets a little bit boring for most of you folks. I mean, maybe not, but how the history of the ozone. Go back. How many of you are familiar with Nikola Tesla? Most of you are. Okay. Nikola and Tesla invented a ozone generator back in the 1800s, and the only thing is they were breaking down quite a bit because it was overheating. So he decided to go the electrostatic route instead of just standard electrical. And then with that, he got a patent. And these ozone generators that were made back then, that were used through the years, are still going today without any repair or service problem, very rarely, because they run colder. They're not overheating, and the components aren't breaking down. So they're called a cold plasma ozone generator. What's the history? Yeah, it goes back in the late 1800s with Tesla. Well, there's a Schoenbein back in even 1840. Siemens, which is like a General Electric of Europe, is in Germany. He was doing medical ozone back in 1857. He did uses against pathogenic germs in animals and humans using rectal insufflation, or in the case of a woman, vaginal insufflation. By the way, in case you don't know, the most permeable tissue in your body is your lungs. Okay, the second most permeable tissue is either rectal or vaginal tissue. And when you have a lung operation where they're going to take your lungs and they need to collapse them for whatever reason, they will stick an oxygen hose right up your rear. You actually will breathe through the intestinal walls for a while. You can survive, not die that way. Isn't that something? So they can ozone can be applied that way. It seems a little funny. But you know, gay men are into things that I wouldn't get into. But whatever. The gay conference, the AIDS conference back in 2000, I think it was. There was about 100 of them got together and co-opted a German medical ozone machine and did the rectal insufflation. All of them had full-blown AIDS, and by the time they did their treatments, it was all completely gone. We're talking about zero. You know, and what also happens is the T cells go way down. You think, wow, those low T cells, how are you living? Well, guess what? When ozone's applied to the body, the T cells don't need to be coming out of the thymus gland. You don't have to have T cells fighting the disease. Okay, that's why the T cells go down so low, you know, because you usually think, oh, boy, if they get that low, then the person won't survive. But they will. There are so many ways of applying ozone. External application, local and total body, insufflation, ear, rectum, vagina, major autohemotherapy, which is the one I told you about, 100 cc's of blood. Also, there's one called minor autohemotherapy, which is like 10 cc's of blood, and that sort of works homeopathically. They don't do that anymore because there's not consistent results. Intra-arterially, intracutaneously, intramuscularly, intravenously, inhalation, which is what I'm promoting with the nebulizer or atomizer, some people want to call it, or diffusion. Ozonating water and drinking it. Here's another story. I had a woman that had chronic fatigue syndrome. It could not work a day. poor woman was in bed most of the time. And that was back in the days when I had this little tiny aquarium ozone generator that I was selling, I was using at the time. That's before I started building the ultraviolet units. And so all she did was bubble ozone into water and drink 8 ounces of ozonated water constantly throughout the day. It was like 3 months later, her life was so turned around by just drinking the ozonated water that she changed her name legally and moved to Florida and started her life all over again. And she came back around, it was just before Y2K, I was doing my meetings, getting prepared just in case Y2K would get back. She came back and says, "You remember me?" I said, "Yeah, Carol." She says, "Well, hey, I am so much, my life is completely different now and everything." So that was really, really good to hear. So even something simple like that, ozonating water and drinking it. People ozonate their bathtub water and absorb it through the skin that way. Yeah, drinking, gargling, bathing, douching, colon cleansing. I have somebody comes to my meeting, she's a colon hydrotherapist in Columbus, Lisa Gatto, she's from Taiwan, and she bought an ozone generator from me, and that's what she's doing, is giving these people colon hydrotherapy, ozonated water. And it's like scrubbing little bubbles that get in there. Remember the Baba movie years ago? They showed the scrubbing little bubbles going around cleaning the sink or bathtub or whatever. But that's what the ozone gets in there, like scrubbing little bubbles, get in there, clean that colon out real clean. Yes?
I had a serious case of HPV and got rid of it using that method.
Oh, okay, great. Yes.
The warts literally fell off.
I'll tell you what, Mike, you might want to talk to him after the meeting. He works with a lot of things with ozone. He's developed some of his own setups and works more directly with people. I do people like across the country that are on their own doing it, some locally, but not so much, and so you can talk to him on that too. I was hoping my other friend who's a naturopathic physician, Kim, could make it tonight, but the snow was so bad where he was at, he says he didn't think he could make it.
Incidentally, he has Dr. Turska's final machine. The one
Yes,
he personally used.
yes, right.
It's
And
for sale.
yes, for sale. I know he wants to sell it. I was the one who helped him get that. Oh, I didn't finish my story. Dr. Turska, I called him up to talk to him. He was a very busy man. This guy was in his 80s. Or no, I'm sorry, he was in his 90s, early 90s. And so he's treating patients all day long, putting in 12 and 14-hour days. And I'm thinking, man, this guy's something else, So he developed what was known as ethazol. It's OZOL, which is what I'm doing, C10H18O3. He was doing C10H10O3, which is ethazol. It's combining the ozone through like extra virgin olive oil because it will pick up a lot more of the ozone. You use medical oxygen as the input gas, you're going to produce higher amounts. Well, anyhow, I called him up, was talking to him about it, and I told him what I was into. And you know what he did? He started putting the essential oils into the extra virgin olive oil, was even getting quicker results. So he was combining the stuff that I had redeveloped at the turn of the last century with what he was doing. And I wanted to ask him some more questions about him, what he was up to. So I'm getting ready to leave my place. I hardly ever leave home. I usually am there all the time. So I had to leave that day, and I said, I'm going to just call him. He's in Oregon. I'm in Columbus, 8 o'clock my time in the morning. Call him 5 o'clock in the morning at his time. So I'm going to leave a message and say, I'll call you back later, or call and leave a message, answer my questions. So I had a few questions for him, and he was up. He was up, ready to go. I says, where do you get all this energy? This guy's in his 90s. He says, I get to breathe the ethazol that I treat my patients with all day long. Wow, that impressed me. But it's too expensive. Most of the people I deal with are poor. They can't even hardly afford this. I have to give them the nerves. But anyhow, he was so harassed by the government. They tapped his phone. They took him to court. He proved that ozone was grandfathered in, that legally they couldn't do anything about him doing what he was doing, but he was doing it quietly. He was not like Robert Mayer down in Florida, but whatever. Well, I could go on stories on that too, but anyhow, quite a guy. But when he had died later on, they harassed him. They put so much pressure on him, the stress got to him, and he did finally pass on in his mid-90s. So I got a hold of his widow, talked to her, and got his original ethazol generator. It's kind of outdated, the technology, but nevertheless, it's historical value. So if anybody would be interested in something like that, Kim, our friend, mutual friend, is trying to sell it. He needs money, his businessman. I was kind of hoping Kim might be here because he's a naturopathic physician in Greenville, Ohio, and he needs patients. He needs more business. I know the economy is bad. So he's into a lot of different things. He's into frequency therapy, and ozone, and working with Mike a lot too. And Mike's come up with some really neat inventions. I wish I had the time and money to get into some things too. I've come up with some ideas I'd like to put into practice, but right now, not there. How much time? How long have I talked?
Well, you're doing just fine.
Let's keep going. They're called oxidation, pure blood, and disease, strangers to each other. The Holy Scriptures say that the life of the flesh is in the blood. You clean up the blood, you extend your life, okay? That's another reason why the charcoal works so well. It's cleaning up the blood. It pulls these things out like an electrical sponge. It's what they call adsorption rather than absorption, which is an inefficient mechanical action. This is an adsorption, which is electrical, like equal opposites, okay? Magnetic, like north and pole attracting each other. Okay, the inventor, Dr. William D. Neal of Chicago, found that ozone can be attracted to certain aromatic oils, and back then he used pine, thyme, and eucalyptus oils. Okay, either singly or in combination, and there are certain pines that are even better than others. When I first was going into this ozol vapor therapy, I was using pine needle oil, and the Austrian pine needle is the best if you get it. It's not always easy to get, it's kind of expensive. If you want the finest oil in the entire world, there's one called Ravensara aromatica. It only grows in Madagascar, and it's very powerful. So if anybody wants to do the ozol inhalation therapy, and they want to do the ultimate, then I call it ultimate aromatherapy. Bye-bye. Then get the Ravensara aromatica, and it's available online now. It didn't used to be. It was very hard to get a hold of. Okay, this guy, this William D. Neal, was both a doctor, an MD, and a chemist. He had a chemistry background. So he wanted to get the ozone through the lung tissue because he knew it was very permeable, but people would start coughing right away because it reacts so quickly on it. So he was able to do that through the essential oil, like I said, pine, thyme, and or eucalyptus. 10 times he get concentration of ozone, 10 times what would be safe to breathe. Ozol was made by passing ozone through a crescent-shaped tube containing a mixture of pinus oils such as eucalyptus, pine, thyme. The type of ozone generator was a cold spark, high frequency, using about 20,000 volts at less than 2 amps, which most of you don't know. It's kind of technical. Air was forced Air was forced by a blower through the ozonator, then through the pinus oil tube. In this case, what I'm using is this last nebulizer here. Pull out the cork, pour your oil in there about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch, and then turn the unit on and start breathing. What I have people do is you breathe real deep, hold it, do that 3 times, about 1 inch or 2 away from the mouth. You don't want to put your mouth over it if you're going to have a setup like this, because what happens is it ends up condensing in the mouth tissue, and that's not near as permeable as the lung tissue. So you hold about 1 inch or 2 away and draw in as hard as you can 3 times, and then let out, and then hold it away from your mouth and breathe through the mouth and or the nose about 5-6 inches away. And what you do when you do this treatment is you're doing it 6 days and then taking a 7th day off. When God created the earth, He created 6 days and a 7th-day rest. The body needs a rest. It doesn't have to be on the Sabbath, but you want that 7th-day rest. You can still do the charcoal because it doesn't have the pushing action like ozone does. So I have people, and you do that 3 6-day periods, and then you take a week off because the researchers in Europe found that the immune system needs a break. So you take a week off after that to give the immune system a break. And I found out that I was getting much quicker results. I had a man who had advanced cancer it came to me by inspiration to have that 7th day in there. And then I later on found out about taking a week off. And he started getting better because he was doing the ozol vapor every single day without taking a day break. And he was actually slowly going down instead of helping him. I thought, man, this is not right. This is way back when I first started doing this. So this is a learning curve in there involved. Okay, ozol was inhaled for 30 to 70 minutes after each treatment. The patients determined for themselves what they'd had enough. What I have people do is you breathe this until you get lightheaded. But sometimes when you're lightheaded, you're not aware of your surroundings as much, you know. So if you go a little farther, then you'll get a like that. It's time to stop. Because what's happened is the ozone's starting to come back through you've saturated the bloodstream, is coming into the lungs, okay. Some people can go, in the beginning, 5 to 10 minutes only, because they're so bad, and some people can go up to an hour, and I tell them, if you can go an hour, that's plenty. And you work with a body clock. You start at 8 a.m., and do it at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. plus or minus an hour. If you're more of a night person, that's per day person. If you're more of a night person, do it 12 p.m., 12 a.m. plus or minus an hour. You got to work with the body on this. So I've learned all these little things to do to help that make it more efficient, the therapy more efficient. So, okay, people would, they would use a breathing mask back then, but I like the idea of the way I'm doing it here. Because some people breathe it normally. You can get a microphone stand from Radio Shack with a clamp, and then you don't have to stand there holding this thing, because sometimes you work your way up to about an hour. And I tell people, if you've gone an hour, time to stop, okay? That's enough, anyhow. And you're doing it twice a day anyhow, too. And you're taking your temperature, and you've got a log sheet. When you get this user's manual, you'll get a log sheet with this, too. Let me turn this over.
And of course, we won't forget the love basket.
It's right
Whoa!
here. For heavy cash, right here.
Are you going to have volunteers for this?
I don't know. I tell you what, I found out that this nebulizer that I got recently, they've changed the design and it's putting out a little bit too much. So probably people won't want to breathe this right now, but usually it's, I've got some new nebulizers coming. The ones I used to use, I don't know this new supplier, what they did, but it's putting out a lot of vapor. It's a little bit hard to breathe. Oh, okay. All right. And so probably nobody would want to breathe it like it is now, because I even have a hard time breathing this, and I'm used to doing the ozone vapor therapy. So even adjusting my valve here is still not, it's a little bit much. So, but you get the idea of this. You're not going to get much on just a little bit of a treatment anyhow, but you can smell it. It's got tea tree oil and the ozone in there, both the odor there, from it. I did this thing at USPA. It was about probably 15 years ago when David Hudson was speaking that day. And somebody did do one treatment, and at the beginning of the morning for about 15 minutes, I remember this very well. I mean, she came back and she says, "I don't believe this. I've had this pain in my lungs for years, and nobody's been able to help me." And she said, "Wow, it's gone. I want one." She bought one on the spot right there. And so that was when they were using a little small machine. It takes longer because it was very low output ozone. It was used for ozonating water. And by the way, ozone generators are used throughout the world for their water treatment systems, to clean up the water supply. Mark Spitz, who won more gold medals than anybody, I think, in the history of the Olympics, and maybe somebody's surpassed that now, he swam in an ozonated pool, and all the European swimmers would not swim in the pool in Los Angeles when they had the Olympics out there because they did not use ozone, they used chlorine, so they switched over, found out it was really easy to do. You just generate it on site, And so then they had no more rioting. It wasn't rioting, but almost like a strike. So, but Milwaukee is using it, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, or is it maybe it's LA? Most all the cities in Europe, Moscow, Paris, London, they all are using ozone into their water. If you look on the side of
Naval Academy swimming pool.
Yeah. And by the way, ozone treatments are being done at Bethesda Naval Hospital, unbeknownst to the public, yet it's being basically suppressed everywhere else. Another story real quick. Magic Johnson, does everybody remember when he had AIDS?
Yeah.
I was the one that got the bug in his ear indirectly to go to Germany and get ozone treatments. A friend of mine, a black man that drove a Coda bus in Columbus, his ex-wife was friends with Magic Johnson's wife. And I was telling him all about ozone. He says, "Man," he says, "this will work against AIDS. You heard on the news just the other day that Magic Johnson is saying he's got full-blown AIDS. We could get it to him. My ex-wife knows his wife." So he got the information, and he flew to Germany and got the medical ozone treatments. Of course, he had the money to buy one of those medical ozone generators over there, which are like 10 grand or something. And he brought it back, and he got rid of his AIDS. The only thing is, unless you go on the internet, that's the only way you can find out about what happened there. Because he was basically hushed up not to say anything on TV anytime he was being interviewed. They don't want the public to know about it, guys. They don't. They can't patent ozone. They can patent drugs, make lots of money. Follow the bucks. Follow the bucks. Okay, that's enough.
Well, very good.
And you start getting, when you're out of your element and you start getting coffee that like this, hey, this is just great.